let's look real quickly first at this 10 tips to building a healthy meal. Because when we talk about building a healthy meal, that means that you have some autonomy. You have some control over what that meal is. And the best control that we have over meals would be where? At a restaurant or at home. At home. But what has happened for us in a general sense, in a cultural sense really, is that we have stopped having the majority of our meals at home. So let's say in the course of 7 days, and we'll just talk about dinner, because I know breakfast and lunch breakfast you ought to have at home, because that's where you're at. Lunch is much more difficult. Not everybody can drive 30 minutes home and 30 minutes back on a lunch break. So if we talked about breakfast and dinner in particular, think about it. Think about in 7 days, how many of you guys eat at home 7 days a week for dinner? Anybody? 6 days. 6 days a week? 2 or 3 people. 5 days a week. We got Steve on the 5 days. 4 days a week you eat at home? 3. 2? Couple nights a week. And 1 or 0? How many of you guys eat out every single night of the week? So if we were up in the 5 and up category, we would be making huge progress towards lifestyle change. It's just it's not in our culture anymore. We don't sit down an entire family at the table where everybody is like looking at each other and talking about who we are and what went on in our day. If we do eat at home, we often sit in front of the television and we look at the TV in a row or around the television where there's no conversation, there's just television watching. I've seen that in lots and lots of families, and I have the good opportunity to have lived without a television for 7 years. And then I came back here and I would visit friends that I had not seen in 16, 17 years. I walk in the door and the TV's on. I mean, these are people I haven't seen in 17 years. They didn't even turn the TV off. We sat down to have a dinner and the TV was still on. I mean, even during that, and at the break room, I don't know if you guys have a TV in this break room, but at the food bank, we've got a television on in there, and I sit with my back to the TV, and I've got all my buddies around, and we're eating lunch together, and they're all looking up here. I'm like, wow, I get a little bit of a complex. I'm like,
what's wrong with me?
What's wrong with me that I'm not looking, for one? And number two is like, aren't I a little bit more interesting than, CNN News? So that's huge step when you go in the house in the evening. You can cook dinner with the TV on. If you have one of those open kitchens like I do, fine. But man, when you sit down to eat, turn it off.
But the novela's going on.
Then plan your meal away from the novella or record it. And now you can record on we don't really have excuses about missing shows anymore.
Right.
So plan your meal before or after the novella or your favorite show or record it. But turn that off.
So what makes do we eat more while we're watching TV? Is that what you mean?
Well, what happens is that you are paying attention to what you're watching and not to what you're eating. So flavor, fullness, all of those things go right out the window. So you put on your plate what you think is a serving, and you may be full before you finish, but you won't know it unless you're paying attention. Also, the communication between people and food I don't know if you guys remember in your mother's house, in my grandmother's house, where did people gather? In the kitchen. In the kitchen. And somebody was cooking or somebody was doing something, but everybody was in the kitchen. It was like the center of the universe. And it is, really. It's where all of your memories of good things, emotions and food are very intricately connected. And connections with family also. One of the beautiful things I experienced in Spain was the midday meal. And I know we can't have that here, but we have dinner. and I would go to friends or family, and I would sit at a table with 3 or 4 generations of people. They didn't all live in the house, but they came for that meal. From little bitty kids, teenagers, young adults, people my age, and grandparents, and everybody was at the table. Teenagers sat at the table with their parents and grandparents and had a conversation. Wow. I mean, to me, that was a big deal. And it wasn't just them, looking at their plate and eating. They were talking. There was a connection there. So it's important. In addition to paying attention to the quantity and the quality of the food, that social connection to eating is very important. So these 10 tips are things we have gone over them with respect to eating out. We talked about them with respect to building a healthy plate on our very, very first lesson. Making your plate half vegetables and fruits. That's like been drilled. I think you guys have kind of gotten that message, right? The lean proteins. We're not talking about fatty meats or fried meats. On this one, twice a week, make seafood a protein on your plate. That's really, really a big leap. For Americans, especially in this part of the country, we don't eat that much seafood. But we've got access to some pretty good stuff out of the Gulf if we just kind of, make some attempts at it. Whole grains, we all know that we're trying to choose at least half of the things that we eat that are grains, make them whole. I'd prefer all of them to be, but I know it's not always possible. Your low-fat dairy, avoid adding extra fat. Take your time. This is what we were just talking about. Savor your food. Eat slowly. Enjoy the taste. Pay attention to how you feel. You have a trigger mechanism that tells you, okay, ya vale, that's enough. I'm full. And if you eat too quickly, that trigger happens after the fact. After you've overeaten, you'll get that, but by that time it almost hurts because you ate too quickly. If you eat slowly, if you chew your food, have a little conversation, pay attention to what's happening, at some point that trigger will kick in and it'll say, okay, you've eaten enough. And a lot of times there's food left on your plate. So next week, we're going to try some kale, mustard greens, turnip greens. We're going to try some stuff you may or may not have included. And then finally on this sweet tooth, I think I mentioned this before, about having fruit after dinner instead of the brownies, cupcakes, cookies, ice cream. Try some fruit. See what happens. See how it feels. The other page that I had that I thought was really important about smart shopping for veggies and fruits. Now this is a way to stretch your dollars, but also to include those things in your diet at home so that they don't expire, so to speak. You got this one, 10 tips, the smart shopping for veggies and fruits. 10 tips. The 3 I thought were most important. Well, of course, seasonal, because it's going to be less expensive and I'll have more flavor. Stick to your list. One thing about eating at home is to have a plan. So don't just first of all, don't go to the grocery store hungry. Second of all, don't go without a plan. The grocery stores, remember we've talked about shopping on the edges? But most of the marketing and most of your visual focus is going to be where? When you walk in that door. Right there in the middle, where all the saturated fats, all the preservatives, all of the salt, all of the packaged foods, hydrogenated oils, that's where they live, and they're going to be calling to you. So go in with a plan. Think about, what am I going to have throughout the week? How many meals can I make out of that whole chicken? Have a plan for those meals during the week. Go into the grocery store, buy those things first, stay on the edge. And then if you still have either time or ganas or money, go to the middle. But do the edges first. Go to the edges first, buy your meals for the week, and then go to the middle. Go to the grocery store once a week. Your food will last a lot longer, because if you go once a month and you buy a bunch of fruits and vegetables, by 2.5 weeks in, that stuff is pretty much gone. Right? Unless you do some pretty serious preservative methods like freezing or canning or something like that. So once a week to the grocery store with a plan for the week. You stay in there way less time and you waste far less. Plan and cook smart. Number 10, prepare and freeze vegetables, soups, stews, or other dishes in advance. If you cook a meal, cook more than you need and then freeze portions. You can take it for lunch. You can have it for one evening when you don't have time to cook. You can leave it for your kids or your partner if they are going to eat by themselves one evening. And it's a meal. All you have to do is pull it out, put it in the microwave on thaw, and you've got another meal for the day. If you stock your kitchen with certain items that day when you've had your afternoon snack, because if you have your afternoon snack, your eyes don't get big and you don't want to eat the whole refrigerator, right? You're kind of like mellow with your blood sugar. You have time to get home. And if you have all these items on hand at home, you can make a really good meal in a really short period of time. So what we started out with was just pantry essentials, the things that you keep in your pantry that you should have at all times. And we even made it like a shopping list. So you just take this with you, check off what you already have in your pantry, and the rest of it you go and get at the grocery store. You should try it out. Things like olive oil, canola oil, those are all your basics for cooking. There's different kinds of vinegar, salt and pepper, some whole grain cereals, different spices, and you can add whatever you'd like there. Tuna in a can. You can also get salmon in a can. You can get chicken in a can. Try to look for low salt varieties, not packed in oils. Buy your low sodium beans. Remember, if you don't buy the low sodium beans, you can rinse them like we did with the chalupas last week. Dry beans, if you have a crock pot, you can always cook those yourself. Low sodium broths, chicken, vegetable, beef, even fish broth you can use to make some rices. And then your whole grains like rice, bulgur, quinoa, all of those things, whole wheat pastas, all different types, honey, sugar, potatoes and sweet potatoes, and then all your cooking things like garlic and onion. All of these things in the cupboard. They're not going to go bad. Then you go to the refrigerator. Low-fat milk if you drink it. You should always have eggs, some kind of yogurt. If it's plain, you can use it for desserts with fruit and honey, or you can use it to make sauces and dressings. So you got to get plain, though. Don't be getting that sweet stuff, because then you can't use it for anything but a dessert. Dijon mustards, carrots, celery, lemons, limes, all the different types of nuts that give us the good fats. And then in the freezer, and this is where the key lives. And there's a lot of places now where you can buy these big bags of frozen fruits, vegetables, fish, chicken, big, huge frozen bags. So a lot of them are individually portioned. I bought at Costco a big, huge bag of organic broccoli florets. It comes in 4 separate bags. It's enough for 2 people each bag. You just stick that stuff in the freezer, and when you get home, you've got some source of protein. You've got fruits and vegetables if you don't have them in the refrigerator. You've got your whole grains, something to make salad dressing. I mean, you've got everything there, and you don't have to go chow down on something that's not good for you. So it's a good opportunity. You go home, you got the pasta, you've got the sauce, but you don't have any fresh veggies, but you've got that bag of mixed stuff in the fridge, in the freezer. You can get your vegetables into the mix. Try this. We worked hard on it. And we worked hard to not make it weird. So like down here where it says optional, that was the weird stuff, you know, if you want to be experimental, like flaxseed, ginger root, sesame oil, tamari, which is, it's a really nice substitute for soy sauce. It doesn't have wheat in it. So those things, those are my suggestions. I think for most of us, if we've got the stuff at home, we might be more likely to stay there and eat than if you, and that snack in the afternoon. We talked about that last week as well. It keeps you from having the desire to just eat anything and not being able to make it home and get your dinner made.